Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy.
Hi, how are you?
Well, to be truthful, not great.
Yeah.
Kind of shitty, but okay, you know. Isn't that what we always do? We always say, I'm fine, and we're not really fine.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be honest and not do that. I'm fine when I'm actually kind of in a shitty mood. I was fine a couple hours ago, and now I'm kind of in a shitty mood.
Yeah, something triggered.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? Like, I just got an email. It's not even a big deal thing, really. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I'm a highly sensitive person. I know that's like a designation. That could be, but I feel like that's more about noises. All of those bother me too. So maybe, I don't know if it's because I'm a Pisces. Oops, did cancel my notifications. I'm not even going to edit that out, everyone. I don't know if it's because I'm a Pisces and we're notoriously sensitive. I don't know what it is. I just know that when one little thing goes wrong, or it's not even about it going wrong, but when there's one little thing that feels like it could potentially be some sort of judgment on me, it just takes me down. It makes me sad. And I hate that happens. So I got an email from somebody saying they didn't want to be part of a community I run. It's totally valid. They were very kind to say it's not about me or anything. It just wasn't the right fit. And still, I immediately was like, I could immediately feel all the energy drained out of me.
Aww.
And that's just like, ugh. And then even though I can objectively realize, like, it's not about me and it's fine. Like, my brain sort of catastrophizes, first of all, going like, well, now everyone's going to want to leave the community. What's the point of even having this community? Like, you suck. And there's also that part. Like, it catastrophizes to the worst case scenario. And then it also creates like the shaming, makes it about me. Like, you suck. You're the reason. Why can't you do better? All from one silly email. Like, it's just wild how my brain does that and can run away with those sort of thoughts. Even when objectively I'm sitting here going, brain, don't be silly. That's not true. And then it derails for at least hours, if not the whole day.
Oh, wow. I'm a Pisces moon, so I kind of feel that a little bit. I don't think I catastrophize as hard as you do probably, but my wife does. Like, she has similar moments like that where like everything could be going great and then just like one thing just kind of like disrupts the vibe, and it's just like this, we call it like a spiral of catastrophe, right? Like, you just kind of get out of control. I'm trying not to put on my coach hat right now.
I mean, it's okay if you do a little, like, because I can objectively, although it might be helpful for other people listening that have the same thing. And it's funny because I'm okay when things don't go the way I expect. Like, if I'm doing a project and so there's a wrench that gets thrown into the plans and we have to like come up with a plan B, like that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. It's things that my brain can turn on and make it about me. Like, so this is a community I run, so someone's leaving, so it feels personal. Yeah. Even though I know it's not, I hope it's not. You see, even though my brain's still going, even though she said it's not, like, there's this little part of me going, but is it? But anyway, but anything that my brain can make about me. So like, I'm not in all scenarios am I going down the like, oh, this is all ruined now because I can figure out how to do X, Y, or Z. I don't know. It's like, I have some growth mindset in that, like, I will very often be like, let's figure out how to make this work. What do I do? But when it's something that feels like a judgment on me and my worth or my ability or whatever, then that's where I immediately go into like, worst case scenarios and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that is a little normal, right? Because the things that we build, the things that we like put our hands to do, like, it is a reflection of us, right? So in some way, it's, I would think it would be weird if you didn't feel that way at all. if you were just like, oh, well, that's just that person, right? I don't know.
You think so? That makes me feel a little better because I feel like it's extreme. Maybe it's not because of your first reaction. No, we'll see. Was like, oh, and that made me immediately go, oh shit, I am fucked up. Like it's not normal.
Yes, you are. We're all fucked up.
We
like
are.
honestly,
but in this particular way, I feel extremely fucked up. And of course, we're all fucked up. You're right. And I'm sure that if I think hard enough, it has something to do with like my core wounding and trauma and all that kind of stuff, right? Which is actually not that hard for me to figure out because I have a lot of abandonment issues and feeling not particularly wanted. And so I think it probably very much goes to that. So there is the trauma piece that's always at play. Okay, so maybe your wounds are different and maybe you're in this exact sort of situation doesn't apply. But when you have something that it triggers or is like hits a nerve for you, and that's like a wounded soft spot like this is for me, like how do you pull yourself out of that? Like, because I think I'm in that like very much, oh, I have an open wound, you just poked it and it's feeling very tender, right? Like, oh, there's that wound again, which by the way, like as I'm talking this out, okay, this is becoming real therapeutic. Which is probably because I am seeing like, oh shit, this is probably that core abandonment wound of like this like core feeling of not being wanted. Yeah. Which I often fight off by being the one who leaves first, or like I reject first so that I don't have to be rejected. And when I feel rejected. And so this like relates to like a client, if a client doesn't renew with me, or if I have a discovery call and they don't book with me, or and this basically I'm running a community and then they opt out. Those kinds of things all feel like, even like unsubscribes, right? Like silliest things all feel like I think they're hitting that core wound and feeling like I'm feeling soft and tender and vulnerable in those moments, right? And I think I'm going back to that unsafe place. So when that comes up for you in your own way, we all have it. What are the things that help you like tend to yourself so that you can get back to functioning? I think it's a little bit different every time. The one thing I want to say is like, I'm really good at rationalizing, right? And I also have abandonment wounds, like really, really bad abandonment wounds. So, so like, I think it's one thing to like intellectually understand what's happening, but a completely different thing to like actually like feel it and feel your way through it. And for a long time, I felt like thinking about it intellectually was enough, right? But then like something really devastating would happen and it would just like the floodgates would open up and it was like, oh shit, okay, this has all just kind of been building for however long. And so what I try to do now is just let myself feel like shit, like just let the feelings be there, like try not to like fight the feelings. I'm getting emotional just talking this out. But yeah, just like, because the feelings are there as data points, right? And again, this is how I try to like merge the feeling side of myself and like the intellectual side of myself, right? The feelings are there as data to like communicate something to me about myself that I'm blind to or that I need to spend some time with. And if I try to rush away from the feelings, I miss out on that information. And I say this, but with the caveat that like, I don't always do this. Like there is more often than not, I'm trying to rush out of the feelings because I don't want to feel that way, right? Or I'm trying to like ignore it. But when I do allow myself to like think of the feelings as feelings are our friends, right? Like fish are our friends. Then it helps me to like just discover something about myself that allows me to like move through it, I think in the best way possible, even though it like can be uncomfortable in that moment. So that's been the strategy that I've been working on. That's been my method that I've been working on. Cause just a few weeks ago, like I don't know what was going on in the stars or if it's just like
I don't know, 2024 has been like such a shitty year for me so far, but like I went through like a couple weeks where it was just like I felt like I was reliving these core moments that triggered my abandonment issues. And so it was just really, really heavy. And like I could barely get out of bed. Like it was really bad. And so eventually I was just like, I have to let myself sit with this and I have to find a way to like explore this. And so when I felt ready to explore it, when I felt ready to like get out of bed and do things, like I wrote about it for a little bit, and that really helped to just kind of unlock the door to the other side of it. I don't know if that's helpful or if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking is that everyone just needs to have a podcast like this where they come and talk the shit out. Because what I'm noticing, I'm already feeling different, which is great because I can feel some of this moving through me. I really honestly think, even though I think maybe intellectually I would get that this is like an abandonment wounding thing, in the moment, none of that came up because I think my body just immediately went into protective mode of like, it went into fight, fight, freeze. And my response is typically like flight. I'm a flight kind of galley. And so like I could feel, so as I'm thinking through it, the email comes, I see it, and I immediately feel this like pit in my stomach, and like I could feel like my body kind of going concave, like this is this feeling of like shrinking in and I think that's like my body signaling like, oh, you're feeling like little again, like you're feeling like little you, right? So I think it was this like going into this youthful kind of state of like getting small. And then I could feel, I think the catastrophizing piece, my brain goes there as this flight mechanism of saying, well, everything's shit anyway. Everyone's going to leave. You should just hold this thing. Just don't even bother with it. Right. Like, cause that's what my brain immediately goes to. And I think that is my version of flight of like, well, then if I close it all down, no one else can reject. Right. No one else can leave because I'll shut it down first. Like, I don't think my brain was getting all that. It was just like going spiraling. But as I think it through, I'm like, yeah, it is just that core wounding around feeling abandoned, feeling unloved, unworthy of love, that no one wants me, right? That feeling small like that again. And then the reaction being, well, then I need to protect myself by like the way that my protection always showed up is, well, then I will make sure that you can't reject me. Right. So I will just make sure that I'm out of here. And so I think that's where that like, so let's just give up. Let's just close it all down. Yeah. It's not really like a depressed reaction. Like, it's not like, I guess it's catastrophizing, but what it really is flight. I can see it now as that's flight. That's exactly what I do. And this is just another way that I was like, my brain is trying to go into that. It's that automatic response, right? Like, this is what it knows to do. When that feeling comes up, it knows time to flee. We got to get away from this. Right. So then in this situation, and it is a situation, what does that look like? For this, it looks like, well, then let's just close it down because then no one else can reject you. And just talking it all through and like making those connections, as you were saying, taking time to actually feel it instead of just being like, it's fine. Or what I was trying to do, which is like, how do I just like fucking get through the day and like put this behind me? I was trying to rationalize like, this is stupid. Stop being stupid. You know that this isn't about you. Like, get over yourself and like, that kind of stuff that we do. And it wasn't working. But I actually feel much lighter now just by making those connections, talking it through with you, making those connections, because then I can tend to that part of myself to say like, baby, you're okay. Right? Like this is not about that. And you can protect yourself now, and you don't have to flee, right? Like there are other people in this community that do want you and they do need you, and they're going to be there for you. And even if they aren't, you're there for yourself. But anyway, I don't know. It was really helpful.
I'm glad.
So I think for me, the takeaway is talk it out. I love what you said about feeling your feelings, but then like, I like it as information, because I think just feeling my feelings, we hear that all the time, feels like maybe for the heady folks here, the intellectuals, the people who are more intellectual with these things like us. Intellectual makes it sound like I'm judging people who aren't. I'm saying people who are more in their brain than people who aren't, right? The people who are less somatic and a little more in their head. for those kinds of folks saying, feel your feelings, first of all, feels impossible and hard and overwhelming and icky, but also just kind of pointless in a way, right?
Yes.
Like, what am I going to just sit there and wallow in my feelings? So thinking of it as feelings as information, I love that because it makes me think, okay, so what is this feeling telling me? Which is that when you said that, that's where I started to go like, okay, where was I feeling it in my body? And I was going back to getting the email and what did that feel like? And then what is that telling me? And it made me like suddenly feel like, oh yeah, I was feeling small, like my little youthful self. And like, it helps start making some of those connections. So that was really helpful.
I'm glad. When this has happened before, like how do you usually manage it?
Exactly the other things I said. I try to push through, soldier through it, right? I try to talk myself out of it. I mean, there are times when I manage to feel like do what we did here, right? But often I'm like very much in my head, trying to use logic and reason. And the thing is, and I tell clients this all the time, that's hard for yourself. You can't use logic and reason on these core wounding things because they aren't logical. They happened when you were a child who didn't have any logic and reason. Those kind of core wounds are not up in your brains. They are in our bodies, right? And trying to logic and reason that doesn't work. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
But I will often try to just logic, reason, push through, ignore it, and then do a lot of flight. I go to my fight freeze. I go to flight all the time where it's just like, I'm just gonna, this is probably why I also have a bit of a track record of starting, not finishing things. Like I love the start because that's when people are excited and they're coming on board and they're there saying, oh, I like you. I like this thing you're doing. I want to be with you. When the churn starts to happen, when people aren't renewing, they aren't buying as much anymore. They aren't saying, giving me that positive, that like, yes, we still care about you. We still love you. You're still worthy. When I start to lose that, I start to fizzle out on things and let things go, which I'm seeing could be a bit of a pattern related to that trauma as well. And my typical trauma response of fleeing.
Wow. Yeah. That just like, I feel like that just kind of hit me in the gut because I'm that way with my business.
Me too. It's
like
all business,
starting something is really exciting. And then after a while, when it feels like there's either no response or not the response I was expecting, I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to give up.
Yeah, totally. Because I guess in those moments there's still clearly a lot of work here in this core wound of mine that needs to be tended to, because in those moments I haven't developed the understanding, first of all, but even if I think I could make that understanding, which I am here, I don't know if I have the full strength yet to be like, I can love myself and protect myself through the discomfort of waiting for people to come on board or of people saying, no, this isn't for me. Because that's really, really, really hard for me. And that is where I've had this track record of, I have started so many different things. And the second it gets hard, I mean, just this summer, I started a membership and one person signed up. I barely talked about it, right? It's out to a few people. One of those people signed up. None of the rest did. I think I did one follow-up email. So like literally 2 emails to maybe 50 people or something. One person signed up and that was it for me. I was like, I'm done. I could feel myself shut down as soon as people don't immediately give me the feedback I'm looking for, which is, I mean, ultimately is we like you. You're good enough. We want you, right? You're wanted.
Acceptance.
As soon as I don't feel that, then I'm like, I'm out of here. This is way uncomfy. I'm done. Even though my brain will say something else to me, it will go into like marketing mode of like, maybe your messaging wasn't right, or this offer isn't fully formulated, or blah, blah, blah. Like it'll start to go there. But as I'm reflecting on this, I think if I'm really honest, I think a lot of that, like fleeing quickly, shutting things down quickly, not following through or sticking with something is absolutely about that core wound of abandonment.
Yeah. So how do you separate like yourself from the business then?
You don't. Can you? Do you?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I think this idea of stuff like trying to act as though we have like a siloed existence of like business Becky is one person and personal Becky is another. To me, it just doesn't make sense because I'm still like that core wound is inside of me no matter where I am. Like it's still there and it's going to get triggered by like clearly this email was like nothing about, it was strictly business. And if I were able to silo off my emotions, then it wouldn't have bothered me at all. But like, I'm still showing up as my full self inside of my business. And so I don't know how I could separate those things.
Yeah. I mean, because I've heard like other business owners who run primarily service-based businesses, right? Say things online, like, think of your business as like an entity outside of yourself. And like, that's how you should approach it. And so I think there's a way to like, not like detach yourself from it, but like kind of step outside of it to just kind of like see the big picture. Like, but I think the challenge becomes in figuring out like how to do that back and forth, right? Like how to be in it, but then like when you need to step outside of it to just kind of like see the bigger picture, like it's not like a one-time thing that you do where you're just like, okay, I'm stepping outside of it and now I'm completely outside of it for like ever, Like I think it's a back and forth, and at least that is what kind of makes sense to me in my head, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that.
Yeah, I haven't either, other than like these kinds of situations, which is why I think I crave community so much, even though I'm like deeply, deeply introverted and need so massive amounts of alone time to recover. When I'm alone, though, like I will think things through. I can get really in my head. But the problem is once I'm in there, I have a hard time seeing the forest for the trees, right? Like everything gets very like jumbled, and like I'm a verbal processor despite being very introverted, if that makes sense. And so like I need community spaces to be able to talk things out, because being able to get it outside of myself, first of all, just through talking, like I can start to see it a little more in front of me. And then having other people reflecting what they're seeing as I bring it out also helps me with being able to sort of remove it from myself. When I'm trying to do that internally, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
I try, but I just can't seem to do it. And so I don't know if that's just the verbal processor part of me or what, but so I guess for me, the thing that helps me the most with trying to do that is community, and having a space that I can go to with people that share values, that I can trust, that I can have those kinds of conversations with and get some outside perspective. And honestly, sometimes I don't even need this perspective. I just need a space in which to speak it. And I've tried it alone. It doesn't even work speaking out loud to myself. I don't know what it is. There's something about having someone else there that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can see that, because I'm the same way. Like if it's just me, like it's like a ball of yarn, right? Just like all tangled up and whatnot. But if I have someone to just kind of bounce ideas off of, or just to listen, then it's like things start to click much faster. And I just want to say also, I think you're great at building community, like the podcast collective, the FEO, like the feminist founders, like there's so many, those communities I think are just really awesome people in those spaces.
Isn't it fun how my brain can hear that? And I love that. Thank you. And I can see spaces I'm in. The particular community, this person left. There's like 25 of us. One person left. I can't see the other 20 people or whatever that have been giving me incredible, like not all of those 20 people are giving me incredible feedback, but there's at least a handful of them that are constantly telling me how much the community means to them and how much it's helping them, and, that they really love it. And like, I see that stuff, and it's just kind of like water off a duck's back. Like it just comes and goes. And then the one email from somebody saying, this community isn't for me, is like a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
But that's just, I think that's how core trauma and like wounding works, right? Like it's the thing that reinforces the narrative, the thing we want to believe or that we've been made to believe is the stuff that sticks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been helpful though. Not that we need to do therapy in front of everyone, but I'm hopeful it's helpful for other people too, though, because I can't be the only person. I mean, it sounds like we share similar wounding. How it gets triggered or how it manifests or the ways we respond to it might not be the same. But I think just for anyone to like notice, I think for anything, I think the thing that comes out of it for me the most is whenever you're upset about anything, but I think as a business owner in particular, is to really investigate, like, is the story that my brain's telling me the truth? Right?
Yeah.
Is there something else here? And I love that, like, also, like, so what are the feelings? What's the information these feelings are giving me? And I also think the somatic experience of that, like, where am I feeling it? Not just what are the feelings, but like, where am I feeling those feelings in my body, and what messages might that be giving me? Because I think with a little investigation, so much of the stuff that we believe to be true about, like, oh, business needs to look like I need to do this thing, or oh, this thing means this thing. Very often it's not at all that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even when we think we're being objective, I mean, it's impossible to be.
It's impossible to be completely objective, and I think in a situation like that too, like there's a little part of you that probably is grieving that loss, right? Even though to some people, it might seem like not really a loss, but because you are so invested in building these communities, like it's going to feel like a loss whenever someone wants to leave. And so allowing space for you to grieve that, right, is going to be important too, I think.
Yeah. Well, and someone told me too that grief is just, because I think we often think of grief around like death. Mm-hmm. And for sure that's grief. And I've had that kind of grief. But I think it's important to know that grief is just, it's loss, but it's also just when something isn't what you thought it would be. Right? Mm-hmm. Like when something doesn't go the way you thought it would be, which even can be, we often have to have grief around things that are really positive too. Right? So like getting married or having a baby, like these are things we wanted, but then we may also be grieving the change, that loss of what was, of like my single self or my childless self. And like, so I think it's important to remember that. And so I definitely think that there's grief inside of that. So yeah. And we head down to talk about, and I think we should at some point too, but talk about grief. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because I feel like it'll take forever, and I want to talk about your neighbor, which is the other thing we were going to talk about. But I do feel like something I need to work on is grief practices, like some rituals or something to help with grief. And like in those moments when I recognize there's some grief, of like, what are some of the rituals that could help me? So maybe that's something we can put on our notes to talk about. About grief. Yeah. That's something that I think about a lot. I talk to clients about a lot, and then I'm like, what are my own practices? I don't really have any. And other than for like death. And that's really just because other people have created those practices and I just observe their practices.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think
that'd be an interesting conversation. I have some thoughts about that because grief came up in a group program I was running and it ended up taking over. And so I had to like pivot, and so, but it ended up being really, really good. So,
well, and where was I? I'm not going to go too far down that. It doesn't matter where it was, but just recently I was on a call. It was an FEO. It was a Coffee Connections call. So we were having a networking call, which those calls, for anyone listening, it's a group, a networking group that I helped create and that Taina is part of. And we have pretty deep conversations because we all get to know each other and we all have these sort of same shared values. And people were talking about like their own experiences with their kids in schools and stuff and how things have changed. And we all started like this idea of grieving for the life we could have had if patriarchy didn't exist, if racism didn't exist, if all of these like structures and systems were different, that grief of what life could have been for us. And I was like, oh, that's heavy too. So like, I just feel like grief comes up all the time. It's such it is like a critical part of our lives and one that I think doesn't get talked enough. Okay, so let's put a pin in it because I want to come back to grief and it deserves its own episode.
It does.
Okay, so thank you for helping me with my issue. We were just going to talk about like the shit that's happening right now in our lives and like random shit that is keeping us up at night or whatever. And so you have a problematic neighbor.
Yes, I do.
Can't wait to hear the story.
So we just bought a house earlier this year, and it's a townhouse set up like a duplex. So we live in Baltimore, so it's a lot of townhomes and row homes, right? That's the architectural style here. So we bought it because we're tired of spending so much money on renting, and we needed a backyard for the dogs. And it's a quiet neighborhood. There's like an athletic field across the street. So we don't have a whole bunch of neighbors. So it's pretty quiet. But so we share a wall with one neighbor. We'll call her Lilith. I don't want to put real names out there just in case. And then on the other side of our driveway, so we have our driveway and then like a little patch of grass and then another driveway. And then it's the next set of townhomes. So on the other side, we have an older white male neighbor. We'll call him Peter.
Chad. Oh, okay.
Chad. No, he's not quite as bad as a Chad. We'll call him Peter. So it was him and his wife. His wife passed a few weeks ago, which was really sad. And both of their neighbors are they're really nice. They've been really welcoming to us. They're really nice. But Peter, he's an older white man, has historically voted Republican. So, just some like
And isn't Baltimore
microaggressions.
pretty overwhelmingly Democrat, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah,
You're in the city, right? Like you're in the
we're
city.
in the city. Yeah, we're in Baltimore City.
Pretty blue, I thought.
It's very blue. And so, he's said some things
Odd
here
man
and
out,
there
right?
that, are a little bit problematic. And we're
You
just
want to
like,
give any examples or no? I'm just to give a flavor of the kinds of problematic things.
I'm trying to think of like something super specific. Like, so it's summer, right? It's summer now. It might not be summer when listener as you're listening to this, but it's summer as we're recording it.
We have Australian listeners or something. Oh, when they're listening to it. Gotcha. If you're listening in the future.
If you're listening in the future or in the Southern Hemisphere, it's not your summer, but it's August, so it's summer for us. And there's not a lot for like teenagers to do here, which is part of the reason why a lot of the crime rate is so high, because, when there's nothing to do, kids get into trouble. And he was complaining about some of the Black kids who just ride around in their like motorized bicycles, right? And just like, they're making so much noise, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to call the cops. And it's just like, dude, it's a park across the street. Like, that's what it's there for kids to have fun, like chill the fuck out. Right. But, so, we're trying to keep the peace. We're trying to keep the peace because he is our neighbor, and, we're not necessarily like giving him a pass, but we are a bit avoidant, right? Because we also spend a lot of time outdoors because of our dogs. And so it's somewhat gotten to the point where we're just like, is Peter outside? Like, should we wait? And so we're trying to like come to terms with that and figure out, the best way to like handle him. Also, and this is going to sound really horrible, but I'm not sure how much longer he's going to live, because he's really old. His wife just died, and usually older men don't last much longer after their wife, who is basically their caretaker, passes. He did tell my wife of like, he's a talker. He has a lot of dad jokes, and he gets a little too personal sometimes. And he told my wife about like some extra skin on his groin area that he had to go to the doctor for. Yes. It's just.
Okay. Now that's the most problematic thing you said. My God, that's so inappropriate. I don't even know. Well, like I wouldn't even know how to react.
I know. I was just like my wife started telling me, and I was like, I don't want to know anything else. Just stop talking. Please don't tell me what he told you. But okay, so the people that we bought the house from, to get to my question. So it was an older woman who lived here. She bought it when they first built it in the 60s. And in recent years, she developed dementia. So her family put her in a nursing home, a caretaking facility. Some wannabe investors bought the house from them and did a few things to like, quote unquote, flip it. I'm doing air quotes because according to them, they flipped it. They didn't really do hardly anything. And we bought it from them. So we're really the third owners, but the third owners, but the second set of people actually living in the home. So the older lady who was the original homeowner, she planted this magnolia tree in the strip of grass between our two driveways. He wants to cut it down. And we're just like, we don't want to cut it down. One, because we want to honor, the original homeowner. Plus, it's a tree. Like, it brings shade. It helps with the atmosphere, right? Ecologically speaking, we're trying to minimize how many trees are getting cut down. But he's like, won't let it go. And so I don't know if we should just like give in to just kind of like, and I hate to use the phrase keep the peace because that's often used to like repress people. But I will say, I don't know if we should give in to just consider the relationship that we're trying to have with our neighbors, or if we should like just be like, no, we're not cutting down the fucking tree. It's the tree is staying. I don't know. What do you think?
How long do you think he has?
Definitely not as long as the tree. Like, this tree will outlive him for sure.
Is it on your land or his?
I think it's on ours.
So, and is he wanting you to pay? Like, does it need to? Can you take it down, or would you have to pay to get it taken down?
We would have to pay to take it down.
Then
He said he would
wouldn't
like
it?
split the cost.
No, I would say we love the tree. If you're that invested in taking it down, we could talk about you paying for it. But we love the tree. I mean, I don't know like why it would need to even be. I mean, I get it. I mean, it's hard, but I don't know. I think I would just be like, yeah, I know you don't love it. We really love the tree, and just like every time he talks about it, just be like, yeah, we just really love the tree. Like,
It's
I don't
so
know,
beautiful.
Yeah. Or I would. I mean, I guess if he was kept bringing up like, we just don't really have a problem with the tree. We really like the tree. Like, I think that just have to be my response. It'd be different if it was like a shared responsibility where, I don't know, some clear thing where he has some actual legal stake in it or something. But if he doesn't, I would try not to be rude about it. I think I would just be like, yeah, I know, but we just really like the tree. Like, I think that would just be kind of my response. But also, just to be clear, I don't care very much about people on the whole. And I'm not a big person to worry about relationships. Like those kinds of, I'm a person who's like a family by choice, like friends because I want them to be. Like, I'm not somebody who's like, I'm going to maintain relationships just because we're family or just because I've known you a long time or just because of proximity. Yeah. Like, I'm just not somebody who's like that. My husband's much more the kind of person who's like, keep the peace with the neighbors. He's the one who will talk to our old neighbor who comes over and just, I'm like, I just walk away. Like, I just am not that kind of person, which I know people probably think I'm a giant bitch. Like, my kids' friends, parents probably are like, oh, she's cold, she's a bitch, because I'm just not, I don't like small talk, first of all, as an introvert. And secondly, like, I definitely am not interested in talking to people that I know have, like, we just aren't values aligned and there'd be no point. Yeah. And so, I'm not the person who's like very concerned about the feelings of that. Yeah. So you might want, I think you also have to think about like how you show up in the world, because I know I'm wired very differently. Yeah. Probably because of the abandonment stuff we talked about, where I'm a little less like worried about it. I think my reaction, I think some people who have abandonment issues, their response is be more concerned, like to get into that people pleasing, I'll do whatever it takes, just love me. And I'm wired sort of the opposite. Like, mine was more of that, like I said, the flight of like, fuck you then, I'll just get out of here before you can hurt me kind of a thing, where and that has looked like I've had a hard time establishing bonds with people. Yeah. And so sometimes that helps me though, because I'm not much of a people pleaser. Yeah. Yeah. At least not, I mean, I want to take care for people I care about, but like with strangers and stuff, I'm just never really all that concerned. And my husband's the opposite, where he's very concerned about like, oh, they're going to think we're horrible or whatever. And I'm always kind of like, okay, so right? Like, so I guess it depends on how you and your wife are wired and how much you care about his feelings, his impressions of you, all of that. But like, it doesn't sound like you're the kind of neighbors that are having barbecues together or like, no, and you don't definitely not. Like, sometimes there are things I will now do because of my kid being friends with somebody's kid, and like, there might be some things just for the sake of the kids that I might do more than I would normally have or whatever. But generally, I'm the kind of person who's like, I mean, I don't even have relationships with most of my family because we just don't like share values. So why would I, like, I wouldn't choose to be friends with you. That's sort of my philosophy, is like, if I wouldn't choose to be friends with you, then why am I going to be friends with you just because I live next door to you or because we're related? Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm actually the exact same way. My wife is the, super friendly, like, talk to everybody kind of person. And I'm just like, that one. That's what I do with my husband. I let him be I'm like, and I let him take charge of all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And when there's issues, like anything that you need to talk about with the neighbors or something, he does it. I walk away, and they're really used to, I think they're used to that. I'm just like, I'm out of here. And I let him do it. We do talk though about like, where are we taking a stand, or what do we think about something? And I do get worried sometimes, because left to his own devices, he would be a little more people pleasing than I would. And I do worry sometimes of like, are you going to stand firm on what we've talked about? So you have to be careful with that too, of like leaving them be. Yeah. So, yeah. No, one, thank you. 'Cause this is our first time being homeowners. So I'm just like, are we doing like, how do we navigate this? Like, well, welcome to the bottomless pit.
it's a money pit. Like
That's all
even,
it is.
even if you get a good home, a good solid home, it's still a money pit. Like it always needs something.
I'm on my this is my fourth home that I've owned or co-owned with a partner. And this is the first one where we've made money, where we will, like if we were to sell today, where we actually have sizable equity. Every other time I have either barely gotten out or have, in most cases, I have lost massive amounts of money on homeownership.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, but you're in a different time now. Like, I'm hopeful that this means that you'll have a good, like right now, this home we're sitting on is the first time I'm like, holy crap. Like I get what people use. Like people always talk about money, all this equity in homes and how it's like the best investment you can make. And I have been like, what the fuck are you talking about? I have lost money, but I think it has been poorly timed. Like I have bought at the wrong time and sold at the wrong time in previous situations.
Yeah.
Well, 2 homes. I lost money on 2 homes. The third one, we would lose money on it, but we're renting it. So that's another option just to keep in mind.
Okay.
Because that means it's now making money instead of what would happen, which is losing money if we sold it. But anyway, it's hard because you're constantly putting money. It's just a never ending, like this needs done and this needs done. But then also like I got to paint my walls blue and I don't have to worry about who's going to tell me what. I can plant what my husband has gardens and he can make them what he wants them to be. Like there's so many nice things about owning homes.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a trade-off, but it does, whenever you do have to like almost immediately after we moved in, we had to like spend almost $9,000 on electrical work. And it was just like, oh my God, what?
It is painful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, oh my God, and then you think, okay, then that's done. All right. But then something else comes along.
Yeah. The roof is next. And then the windows.
And then the walls.
Yeah.
It's just so much. It doesn't. And then by the time you get it all done, then you're like, oh, our kitchen's out of date. So then you do that. And then the bathrooms now, because you've made that look better, now the bathrooms look bad. So now you gotta get those done. And then I swear by the time you get through the whole thing, you're a decade later and now everything's looking out of date again.
And you just gotta start all over again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's just like, oh my God, is this worth it? It's so hard. It is what it is. I don't think we have any questions to answer this time, but maybe we could pose a question. I'm trying to think if I have one, because we wanted to encourage our wonderful listeners to give us questions because we really want to try and incorporate you all, wherever you are, while you're taking your shower or driving or whatever you're doing right now. Speaking to you, we want your questions because we want to talk about what you also want to hear about. But we thought we might throw a question out to end things. I don't know if you have one.
I think it'd be interesting to hear from people about how they navigate their relationships with their neighbors. Do they have any cranky neighbors that tell them about a growth on their penis? Like our neighbor.
God, I would love to know. I would love to hear questions, but I would also just love to hear that. What is the weirdest thing that's ever happened with your neighbors? So here's mine, which is not nearly as gross as that. The weirdest thing ever happened was we were at a place I lived 15, 20 years ago. It was a really quiet street. We had like block parties, which was really nice. It was it was quintessential Iowa where I lived, and like everyone talked to everyone and all of that. So we were having our annual block party and everyone was out eating because it was a potluck thing. And someone was talking about moving. He was like, oh, we're looking at this house wherever, blah, blah, blah. And someone said, oh, the one at blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, that one. And she's like, you can't afford that house. And he was like, take it back. I was like, what? And he's like, I know what you make. Because he was a public officer he was like you work for the city.
So the salary is public information.
So we found out that our neighbor had been researching what we all make, had taken the time to find out what this person earned and then had the audacity to say that they had done it. Like, if you're doing that, why would you tell anyone?
Why would you? Yeah.
I mean, listen, I cyber stalk my kids' teachers on Facebook if I can find them just to get a feel for are they
who they are,
normal, sane?
Yeah.
And I have looked at their salaries only because I've looked at what the school pays because I pay the money to pay those salaries. And I'm curious if his teachers are making what they should be making. And by the way, they're not. But I had never looked up what my neighbor earns and have never said, I know what you make and you can't afford that house. So
why would you say something like that? That's
right. It's just
incredibly inappropriate.
Also saw my other neighbor wheeled out on a stretcher after she died, which was really depressing. Ooh. So there's that. But
oh my God.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. She had been housebound for since we've been here for 10 years or more. I think she might have been like 15, 20 years. I think she had like agoraphobia or something. And then she passed one day. The ambulance showed up, and then out came the stretcher with the like body bag. Thing. I was like, oh, whoa, that was wild too. So those were my weird neighbor stories. Not as good as what's this growth on my penis, but still. So if you're listening, messyliberation@gmail.com. Please send us your weirdest neighbor story and or any questions about navigating relationships, neighbor relationships or other ones, because I think we'd love to talk about that. We'll just do that.
Yeah. Or tag us on social media.
Please. We're Messy Liberation most places. I think it might be Messy Liberation Pod on TikTok because I think the other was taken.
Yeah.
But, you can find us on the socials. Taina's doing an amazing job there of managing all of that. So thank you. So go find us there. Send us an email, messyliberation@gmail.com. And thank you, Taina, because I feel way better now. Like I really do. I feel like I tended to that stuff. I've understood it. I can breathe through it and realize it's going to be okay. And now I can go and go about my day, which feels really nice. So thank you.
Yeah.
Can we just do this every morning so I can deal with whatever issues going on?
A quick therapy check-in.
I need that every morning. So everyone go do that. Like find yourself a friend to have a podcast with and just turn it into your therapy session. And it's really good. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
I know people say that all the time. And if you're like me, often you just go on to the next podcast. But truly, taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.